These two guys have Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackie and Judd on SKOR North and SKORNorth.com.
Is he a showman? He is worth the price of admission. He was on base 5 times. So I'm sitting here going, I'm looking up the contracts of everybody, like average annual, like where's this going? Because at some point this year, the Angels are going to be sitting there right around 500.
They have to keep him.
And what are they going to do?
He's not getting traded.
They have to keep
So they're riding and dying the rest of the year with him and letting him go.
Because you won't get the value back.
Exactly. And did you see that show he put on last night?
What? You wouldn't mean you won't get the value back? Oh, there's so much to unpack here. MLB Network. That was, I believe that was Mark DeRosa, right? Making a case for the Angels to put Shohei on the block. Or just speculating hypothetically or recklessly, which is what we love to do on Thursdays here on
Reckless Speculation.
Minnesota Sports with Mackie and Judd. You're home for daily Minnesota sports entertainment, therapy, and speculation. And I just want to put one ground rule umbrella out here, boys, and for the audience, and especially if you're new to this whole thing. Reckless Speculation Thursday. It's a lifestyle. Okay, you either live the life or you don't.
It's yacht rock.
It is. It really is. If you
It's
get it
just
or you
yacht
don't.
rock.
Yeah.
That's a good comparison, actually. Yeah.
And B, it's a safe space. Okay, there's no. I think I tend to lean a little closer toward. It should be rooted. You can't just be like spastically throwing out trades. You know, I love Lamp. Okay, like there needs to be some logic that you're bringing to the table for why. There needs to be a motivation for why teams would make a trade.
Yes, I think the most important part, the beginning foundation of the RS lifestyle for me is this. What's a move or what are moves that teams should do and might not consider?
Yeah.
And before anyone out there says, "Oh, Zolgad, you think you're smarter than the teams? You think you're smarter than these guys?"
Yes,
let me
Judd
tell you
does.
right now. Yes, I do.
We can confirm.
Often I do. Not everyone. Branch Rickey, great executive, not smarter than him.
Branch Rickey?
That's a poll.
Lee
Branch
McPhail,
Rickey.
great executive.
I've heard Branch Rickey's name, but is he like from the early 1900s? Yes.
Oh, he is the guy who signed Jackie Robinson and brought him up to the Dodgers.
I know he was. So Branch Rickey was born in 1881 for the record.
Great.
First
of all, it's a great name. Branch Rickey's a great name. Let's just start there.
He would be 142 years old if he were alive.
And you know what? Some teams could use him.
Harrison Ford played him in 42.
Yes, he did.
Yes,
with the
that's
Chadwick
right.
Boseman film.
And now Harrison Ford is playing Indiana Jones again for. He's like in his early 80s, I think.
I'd love to talk about it. Not right now, but at some point. I'm very confused. By that.
we should do that movie on Action Movie Rewind later on this summer.
I'm very confused.
Indiana Jones movie with an 80-year-old Harrison Ford. We should 100% do that movie.
Okay.
So, anyways, let's explore the idea that the MLB RUM's Twitter account put out there. Whoever runs that account apparently has sources and said, look out for the Dodgers, the Mets, and the Twins in the Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes. Okay, but to answer Mark DeRosa's question here, or I guess the other guys on the show were kind of pushing back on it. So just some background on a Shohei Ohtani trade. So the Angels have had Ohtani for 6 years. 6 years. He's never played in a playoff game. The World Baseball Classic stuff that people were all jazzed about was like, that's the biggest game he's played in because he's never played a postseason game in October for the Angels. 6 years, no playoffs. The Angels have had Mike Trout for 13 years. They've only made the playoffs once. 2014.
Ridiculous.
Right now, as of today, and by the way, more teams get into the playoffs now than ever before in Major League Baseball. The Angels are currently third in their division. They're 5 games over 500, so they're not playing poorly. But if the playoffs started today, the Angels would not be a playoff team. And Ohtani is a free agent after the year. So that's where one of the hosts on the show was like, you can't trade him. You wouldn't get the value for him. Well, if you have determined... Okay, if you've determined that you're not going to make the playoffs, you should probably try and collect 2 or 3 really good young players if you think he's going to go sign somewhere else. Dodgers, Mets, Yankees, wherever, right? So like there is motivation for the Angels if they remain out of playoff position. Now, if they remain 5 games over 500 and they're a game back of the wild card, the trade deadline's coming up, you should ride Shohei Ohtani. But if they lose 7 of 8 games and now they're 5 games back of a wild card, They're going to have to tank pretty badly in the next month and a half for this to be a possibility, but it is the Angels, and they have been known to do exactly just that. So I have a reformed trade proposal or trade idea. I know we were just kind of kicking around like Royce Lewis and whatever. I have actually refined this with historical context for you guys. Okay. So there are 3 trades in recent Major League Baseball history. By recent, I mean like in the last 2 or 3 years, that I think you would use as kind of a comparison for a Shohei Ohtani trade. So we're looking for MVP caliber players who are, if you want to get really into the weeds on analytics, who are like 10 WAR players. 10. It's very rare to have a player, one individual player, that's worth 10 wins above replacement. Think Aaron Judge last year. Think Shohei Ohtani the last 2 years. He's been an average 10 WAR player. Mookie Betts, when he won the MVP a few years ago, was a 10 wins above replacement player. So these are like the best players in baseball that play premium positions, or in the case of Ohtani, play pitcher and they hit. So the Dodgers and the Red Sox consummated a Mookie Betts trade that kind of like indirectly involved the Twins too, because at first the trade involved Brusdar Graterol going to the Red Sox and then Maeda coming to the Twins. But then the Twins and Dodgers just worked out the Graterol Maeda thing on their own. So Mookie Betts, coming off MVP, 10 wins above replacement season, and had a contract to figure out. He goes to the Dodgers. The Red Sox get the Dodgers' top prospect, Alex Verdugo. Their third best prospect, Jeter Downs, shortstop. And then their 20. He's gone now.
I think they released him in spring training.
And Verdugo hasn't really lived up.
No, he's with the club, but he's not.
He's been all right this year, but yeah.
Yep.
And then the 28th ranked prospect catcher Connor Wong. Plus, this is another sort of value prop for the Red Sox. The Red Sox shipped off David Price's bloated, massive, like $28-30 million deal. So the Dodgers said, we'll give you 2 of our best prospects, a catching prospect, and we'll eat all that money from David Price to free you guys up. Mm-hmm. All right. The Dodgers and the Nationals consummated a trade a couple years ago. Max Scherzer as a rental and Trey Turner, a year and a half of Trey Turner, both going to the Dodgers. Mm-hmm. And the Nationals received, I think it was either 2 of the top 3 or 2 of the Dodgers' best prospects, a catcher and a right-handed pitcher, who were both top 50 overall baseball prospects. A third prospect who is 17th in the Dodgers farm system ranking, and then an outfielder named Donovan Casey. So they wind up getting one of the best pitchers in baseball for a rental, a year and a half of Trey Turner for 2 really good prospects, a third pretty good prospect, and then an outfielder, which seems like, I don't know, seems like not enough. But I'll give you one more here. It's a little bit different. Juan Soto, because he had like 2 or 3 years of team control left when the Padres made that trade. Mm-hmm. He's not quite as impactful as Ohtani as an individual, but you factor in the team control. And the Nationals received the Padres' number 1 prospect, who was a top 10 overall guy, C.J. Abrams. The Padres' number 2 prospect, who was 21st overall, an outfielder, Robert Hassel III. Mackenzie Gore, the former number 3 overall pick. And then the Padres' number 3 prospect, an outfielder named James Wood, plus a right-handed pitcher. So 5 prospects, including the top 4 in their organization, for basically 2.5 seasons of Juan Soto. So if we could bundle all those together, like those are the comps you would be looking at. I think the Twins would have to give up, or any team. And plus, like, there'd be a huge bidding war for Ohtani because he can pitch and hit, right? Yep. So there's more teams that would.
That's your problem.
And there's just like the hype train that surrounds Ohtani. So I think there's a hype tax because he's Shohei Ohtani. I think the bidding would start at 3 excellent young pieces and then maybe a 4th something. So think like, I don't even know that Royce Lewis would be in the conversation, because by that point he'd be like in your lineup for a month and a half. If you played well, I think his value would be almost too high for a rental. But let's say you said to the Angels, all right, choose 3 of our top 10 prospects. Any 3. You want Brooks Lee? You got him. You want this Emmanuel Rodriguez, the 19-year-old outfielder? You got him. You want I would say Edward Julian, the on-base machine, and he's major league ready, right? Like you can put him at the top of the lineup. They got some pitchers, Simeon Woods Richardson. If you said Angels, you can pick 3 of our top 10 prospects, any 3. Where do you think that conversation goes?
Well, I want 3. So I'm not going to go top 10. I want 3 of your top 5 prospects, if not 4.
Okay.
Here's the issue with Ohtani. There's no comp for him because he does 2 things. So like anything that you just gave us, Phil.
Well, wouldn't the Trey Turner, Max Scherzer would be the comp, right?
But I think it's more but I think the tax on Ohtani is more than that. So by this point, I think you're talking about. I mean, I would say that what would kill the trade is I think that they would demand Lewis as well, no matter where he is or playing. Because here's the realistic thing about this trade to me is simple. The Angels, because there are so many playoff teams now, the Angels are going to be theoretically, when the deadline comes, at the very worst, sniffing around a playoff spot. So they'll be sort of in that mix. And, those standings that you start to check out in July, wild card contenders. And so the reality is, for the Angels to give up a guy, and it wouldn't be entirely stupid if they're convinced, if he has said, you know what, dudes, it's been fun, but I'm going to the Dodgers or the Yankees or the Mets.
Do what you want with the information. Yeah.
I could certainly see there being not fans wanting him traded, but the team saying this makes no sense to let him walk. But I think it's 3 or 4 of your top 5 prospects. I think you're talking about a package that would be unprecedented, even for a rental.
I believe on MLB Network in that clip that wasn't played, they discussed Garrett Cole being kind of the pitching comp for the contract, who makes $36 million. Now he signed that too before 2020, but just like let's just get a basis of what it could look like in terms of the pitching side and the hitting side. So Garrett Cole, we'll use 2 Yankees here. Garrett Cole has $36 million every year. He also has a full no trade clause. Aaron Judge makes $40 million. So, like, think about that. They're like one of the best pitchers in Garrett Cole, probably the best also hitter, not named Ohtani, in Aaron Judge. That, and then do you combine them? Like, does that turn into a $70 million?
The agent damn well is going to try to, right?
Yeah.
$76 million.
Right.
Yep.
Well, by the way,
so 80.
So Scherzer makes $43 million. He's the highest paid now, but those are like short-term mercenary deals. And then, so right now, Scherzer makes the most money as a pitcher, $43 million. I don't think Ohtani I don't think he's the best pitcher. He's a really good pitcher. He's not the best pitcher, and nor is he the best hitter. But he's like a really good pitcher and a really good hitter, and we've seen him in some big games. Aaron Judge makes 40. So if you're the agent, you're going to say exactly what Declan just said, which is, well, let's start the conversation at $75 or $80 million a year because my client can do both at a really high level, right? So the Twins are probably not in on that portion of it. This would be more about would they make a move if the Twins felt like, hey, we're going to win the division regardless. Let's go do something for the first time in, well, I was going to say 20 years. Yeah, 22 years. 21 years. 2002, they made a run in the playoffs. Let's do that for the first time in 21 years. And so it's not about Shohei beyond September, October. It's about Shohei in July, August, September, October.
And the Angels are going to say the exact same thing that the agent is going to say in the winter, which is, hold on a second here. We are basically trading you the rarest of rare thing, which is a dual threat. And if you want him, and you know what? Whether he, for instance, stays with the Twins or not is not our problem. And the other thing too is this. So if they start to talk to teams about Ohtani, and so privately you're sort of discussing, okay, this is great. This is great. What's the downside now? It used to be if he was the starting pitcher that he could only stay in the lineup until he was lifted. But that rule's now gone. He is the DH and pitcher, so he gets to stay in games. So, like, if you are the Angels, what are you going to accept as, okay, we'll take that guy out of the equation because of this? There's no downside to him.
Yeah, it's it is unprecedented for all those reasons. I think where I would come back is just value, okay? And every front office in baseball now has some sort of value measurement, all-encompassing number, the public measurement that you find on Baseball Reference or Fangraphs, and some teams have their own proprietary systems, would just be wins above replacement. So you can dangle all this stuff in front of you. You can dangle like, he's Shohei Ohtani, he's the modern Babe Ruth, and you can say he does both pitching and hitting, and I could say, yep, all those things are true.
Yep.
His wins above replacement as a pitcher and a hitter added up is 10 the last 2 years. He averages 10 wins above replacement, which is the same as Mookie Betts as a guy that doesn't pitch, because Mookie Betts is so great as a defensive center fielder and a hitter, plays a premium position. It's the same as if you were to take Trey Turner and Max Scherzer and add them together. I get there's more value in having one guy equal that as a roster on a roster than having two guys, so I get it. But for that reason, I think when we were talking about this the other day, I said, boy, it would be like you'd almost have to factor in what it would take to trade for both versions, and so is it gonna wind up being 6 prospects? It's not. We've seen 10 win players be traded before. Mookie Betts. We've seen other examples. So on the Royce Lewis front, it's so interesting because let's say he gets called up on June 1st, and you're not going to, the Shohei trade stuff won't happen until like into July, right? If it happens. Yeah. And I would say at this point, because the Angels are at least off to a decent start. Yeah, it's not going to happen. But if this came to fruition, safe space, reckless speculation, Royce Lewis would have a chance for like 6 to 7 weeks of major league at bats. And that's very important because if you're trading Royce Lewis right now, you're still kind of trading a theory. He only played in 12 games last year in the major leagues. He has an injury history. So you can look at him right now and you can say, if you're an opposing team, it's still a pretty big risk for us because we don't know if he can play in the major leagues. Yeah, I know he hit 300 in 12 games, but that's a 12-game sample size. I need more than that. So you could, if you're the Angels right now, you could say Royce Lewis has to be in that trade. But if Royce Lewis comes up on June 1st and he is a leadoff hitter, a number 2 hitter, and he's just banging the ball around the ballpark, and he's a 300 hitter who gets on base, he's playing great defense at shortstop for Carlos Correa being out, or like if he shows out in June and July, and now you're talking about 6 years of team control on one of the best young players in baseball who's showing it at the major league level, his value flips in the next 5 or 6 weeks. Because now it's like, wait a second, I have a guy who's awesome in the big leagues and has 6 years of team control. He's no longer a theory. It changes that whole discussion with the Angels for me.
Now, if Ohtani gets traded, though, I think it makes far more sense, and you would actually probably maximize the trade entirely by sending him to a team like the Mets or the Dodgers who think that they can sign him, because then you're going to get everything. Because at that point in time, you're basically saying we are trading you arguably the best player in baseball, certainly one of the best players in baseball, and you are going to keep him, and we know that. Mm-hmm. Like the Twins will say, well, but we probably can't keep him. And if I'm the Angels, I say, I don't care, your problem. But the reality is, I think a team like the Mets or Dodgers will say, we know that we can sign him. My guess is Ohtani, if he was traded to the Dodgers, would pretty quickly agree to a historic contract, right? The other reckless speculation thing that nobody is throwing out when it comes to the Twins is this, though.
And we'll get to it after Declan tells us about our friends over at Underdog Fantasy.
I got a slip, boys. Now this username is Kirk Sucks. That is the name that sent this to me on Twitter.
That's awfully negative.
Well, he might have a friend, Kirk, that he doesn't like.
He also made 2 picks for a very weird amount of $72 payout. I won't ask how that happened, but hey, that's 72 more bucks in this guy's pocket for taking lower fantasy points on Aaron Judge. That's right. They do fantasy points in Underdog Fantasy.
That's pretty cool.
And then also there's some rival picks. So you can see he took is it Adley Rutschman of the darling Baltimore Orioles right
player.
now?
Yep.
Great young
catcher. And you can do rival picks between him and DJ LeMahieu. You can do the same thing and mix and match. Hey, I'm going to take Byron Buxton over Bo Bichette for RBI and home runs. You can do that at Underdog Fantasy, which is the best and easiest way to play fantasy sports. New users get a $100 promo bonus when they use promo code SKOR, SKOR. Go download the Underdog Fantasy app and show us those slips.
Also, hello to Dennis Kirk. It's riding season, so if you're a motorcycle rider, whatever you ride, Harley, Indian, Metric Cruiser, Sport Bike, you will find what you need at DennisKirk.com so you can ride more and wait less. Over 180,000 parts and accessories in stock, clothing and helmets as well. Shipping is free for orders over $89. If you order by 8 p.m., they ship the same day. Everything you need for your ride at DennisKirk.com.
Reckless speculation.
So here's a bit of, and it's reckless, but it's founded in fact. Reckless speculation is this. How many moves can the Twins afford to make if they are not being paid by their cable satellite carrier, Bally Sports North? So right now, they're not being paid. I believe that the hearing is next week, and that might just decide that Bally's gets to continue to show games because they have a protection of a bankruptcy filing, all right? So, like, these things take time. And there's a good chance that the judge is just going to rule, for right now at least, in Bally's favor, and that they're going to keep the rights. But because of protection of bankruptcy, they ain't paying right now. My point is this, and Phil, you've talked about this before, and back in your day on the Twins beat, reported on this. Those, and I believe the Twins are estimated at $42 million per year that they get from what is called Diamond Sports Group. Well, those play a large role in paying players. Like those are not like nice little, hey, drop-ins. Like, we got a nice little sponsor here. The regional sports network paychecks help you pay payroll. And if they are, and I have not seen a thing about this, but I'm going to assume that the paychecks are still not coming in, that the hearing is going to be set, and that the team right now is going without what has to be considered a pretty important source of income, especially in the spring when attendance has not spiked upwards yet very much. So can you afford to bring on a guy like Ohtani? Can you afford to bring on, I mean, hell, at the deadline, can you go out and make the type of trade that perhaps the Twins, knock on wood, want to make? I think this is an incredibly unexplored piece of the equation, because we could talk about the willingness of Derek Falvey to say, let's spend. But if you don't have that cash flow, that's an issue.
So I'm just doing a little bit of quick research here. So according to Statista.com. So again, what did you, I think your number was right on the Bally's revenue. It's like $40 million a year.
40 to 42. Yeah, it's not great, but it's still important.
It's still like bottom 6 or 7 across all of baseball.
Yes.
But according to Statista, last year the Twins' overall gross revenue was $267 million. So that Bally's deal makes up like 16 to 17% of their overall revenue pie, if those numbers are accurate according to Statista. So yeah, like, it's not, now they have ticket revenue coming in, but they're also not selling nearly as many tickets the last couple of years as they had before. Right. They are paying Carlos Correa among the top salaries in baseball. So yeah, I mean, it is a thing that they aren't doing nearly as well. Now, the funny thing is, if you were to bring in Shohei Ohtani, even for the end of the season, you'd see a ticket spike, right? If you could somehow get him in the mix for long term, you'd have a ton more people come into baseball games, but you'd be paying him like $60 million plus a year.
Right.
So I'm sure there is when they're talking about Carlos Correa, I'm sure they're having those business discussions. Okay, do we think he's going to move? I don't think Carlos Correa has moved ticket sales really at all in terms of like net plus minus. Last year was the lowest, but it was the lowest attendance in Target Field history, right?
Declan bought his season ticket based on C squared.
I did. C4.
C4.
Okay. C4. So anyway, but the point is, I think there's a very unexplored aspect of, and I know that there is a quarter of the people watching this show right now saying, yeah, typical Judd, cheap poll ads, huh? But the poll ads pay from the revenues they bring in. It's not like they're into the poll ad family bank account to pay C4.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting dilemma, and I'm just curious if at some point in time it's going to impact what the Twins actually do from a financial standpoint.
Yeah. Well, and just to be clear here, so with these financial issues, I don't think would have much of a bearing at all on this type of a transaction, because I'm not talking about signing him beyond. I don't think that's realistic. I don't think the Twins are going to sign Shohei Ohtani. and his salary this year is only $30 million. So you'd be paying a prorated, you'd be paying less than 50% of that because it'd be prorated. So you'd be paying him like $12 million or $13 million for the remainder of the season. I think they can scrounge around the couch cushions of one of the Polad, cabins or something and find enough to pick up the rest of that contract. Now, a $500 million contract in free agency, it's a much different conversation. Yeah. What kind of liquidity do they have and appetite do they have for that?
Absolutely.
And I would say no, more than I thought, because if they were legitimately offering Carlos Correa 10 years and $300 million, I'd say, all right, it definitely wasn't enough to win the initial bid until the other team's medical staff's backed out. But, they're a little splashier now than maybe they were 5 years ago, certainly 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, it's a safe space.
Reckless speculation.
How far would you go to try and trade for Shohei Ohtani if you're the Minnesota Twins? And if you're the Twins, this is where I think I'm more in line with Declan than I was a couple days ago. Just go for it, man. Yeah. You haven't done anything in October in 22 years. 22 years since you last won a playoff. You've won one playoff series since 1991. That's it. Go do, be aggressive, do something.
So if he comes in, if they pull the trigger on this trade, what's your expectation? A playoff win? A playoff series win?
Well, I would say at least ALCS at that point.
Yeah.
At least. Mm-hmm. It's hard to, in baseball and hockey.
I know,
they're
but I'm just
so
saying.
volatile. It's hard to say. I think you just have to give your team the best chance. And the Twins, oftentimes, they're not even meeting that threshold when they get in, because Randy Dobnak is starting at Yankee Stadium. Cody Stashak is coming out of the bullpen in a one-run game against the Astros. Put guys on the field that can punch with the opposing teams, and they just don't do that often enough.
Yeah, there isn't a prospect or a player that's off limits in this trade for me. I literally cannot sit there and fathom the idea of, oh man, but the potential of Brooks Lee, or if even Royce Lewis comes up here and rakes, you are trading for what is the best player we've seen in this game in 20 years.
But if Royce Lewis is my line, because again, if Royce Lewis right now, Royce Lewis is a theory still. But if Royce Lewis rakes for a month, he is one of the things you need to go deep in the playoffs. So because he's a win now piece. That's my argument.
Would you gut your franchise for this? If I told you right now I could wave a magic wand and you're going to get to the American League Championship Series, but the asking price is going to be more than we just said, because I do think it's going to be ridiculous. Would you gut your franchise if I told you this team can get to the ALCS?
So it's ALCS with an open end, right? So you're saying gut my, and by, can I define by gut your franchise? I take that to mean you trade Brooks Lee, your number one prospect, Emmanuel Rodriguez, your number 3 prospect, Edward Julian, your number 4 prospect, and then Connor Prelip, your number 5 prospect. But I'm hanging on to Royce Lewis.
No.
But you can take those other. Okay, take a 5th one. You can take 5 of the top.
No, take Royce Lewis.
I'm taking Royce Lewis out. He's being traded.
No, yeah. I'm trading him. I'm trading him.
But Declan, you need other players to perform in October. And Royce Lewis probably has to be one of those players this season to perform in October.
And Shohei Ohtani is a 10 times better player than Royce Lewis at
He's
two
one
different
player,
positions.
though. He's one player.
He's one player that can do 2 different positions. He can hit and he can pitch. He is I'm just making sure I quantify this correctly. Are you saying that Royce Lewis is equivalent to Shohei Ohtani to helping you win a playoff game?
I'm saying I need to see him play in the big leagues for a month before I make that decision, which I would get to do, because this trade's not happening today. It's happening in 2 months from now.
And I would
if Royce Lewis is raking, he's one of your 2 best hitters in June and July. Mm-hmm. I am saying you can't trade 6 years of that, and you can't forget about the 6 years, because the 6 years is a big conversation. You can't trade that if you're trying to win a World Series this year. It would be foolish. You have to trade guys that aren't going to help you as much this year if the goal is to win a World Series this year. You're loading up players to put around Shohei Ohtani. And if Royce Lewis is your raking starting shortstop or third baseman because Correa's out, I think Correa has to be back before you would consider making this trade. So Royce Lewis would be your third baseman. That's what I'm saying. It would be like, okay, you're the Timberwolves and you're trying to get really good. You're going to trade Anthony Edwards for, like Jason Tatum.
But you're
like,
not
well,
really
you
in
need
then.
Anthony Edwards to win in the
Right.
playoffs too. So,
but Phil, you're not truly in then because you are.
no,
going to
I
draw
am
a
in,
line.
Judd. I want to win a World Series this year, and I
But what
need
I'm
Royce
saying is
Lewis to make it happen.
the Mets
Take
are on
all of the
line one.
future. You're
The
saying
Dodgers,
you're
Royce
saying
Lewis is
gut
the
your
hang-up.
franchise for the future, not gut your franchise for 2023. Okay,
I'm
you want to trade Sonny? Okay, we'll trade Sonny Gray and Joe Ryan. That'll make it happen. Good luck winning a playoff series without Sonny Gray and Joe Ryan.
I'm saying I got the Mets and Dodgers on the line, and I want Royce Lewis as part of the package.
And I'm
Are
saying,
you hanging up on me?
I
Are you
don't
hanging up on
know.
me?
I don't know until I see him for 2 more months. I want to see him
Declan
for
is
2
sure of
months.
himself right now.
Yeah,
Declan is sure of himself. It's
I have
over.
no issue.
He's
If
making
he
the trade.
He could come up here and hit 300 from June and July, and if that's part of the package at Ohtani, I'm taking Ohtani.
I'm on Phil's side
every
here.
time.
I agree with Phil completely, but my point is that Declan is still on an island of I am doing this no matter what.
Yes.
And I would say if you did go to the Angels and said, okay, Brooks Lee, Emmanuel Rodriguez, Edward Julian, Connor Prelip, Simeon Woods Richardson, and Marco Raya, who are 6 of the Twins' top 8 prospects. And Royce Lewis is still listed as a prospect because he hasn't played enough Major League games.
Yep.
That would be an unprecedented haul.
Yep.
For a rent-a-player, a 2-month rental, okay? The Angels would say yes to a deal like that. It might come from a different team. If you offered, hey, you can literally take 6 or 7 of our top 10 prospects, that is gutting your franchise. It's gutting your franchise for beyond 2023.
And if it gets me to the ALCS with a chance to win a World Series in 2023, I'm doing it every single time.
Me too.
Every time.
But I want to see Royce for the next 2 months.
Exactly. You're drawing a line. You can't draw a line if you want to make the trade. I mean, I appreciate Declan. I don't agree at all, but I appreciate the fact that he is all in.
I would do it.
This is great. We should pick this up in a few weeks because once we see Royce Lewis play a little bit, then this discussion, because again, this trade isn't happening now. It's happening later. So we all get the luxury of watching Royce Lewis. And then we can, because I will, if Royce Lewis, if he comes up for 3 weeks and he's just blistering hot, we will ask this question again and we can have this discussion again.
Steve Cohen just called. Deal done. Okay, you're out.
Oh man, this is peak reckless speculation right here.
Speculation.
Love it.
This is the spirit of reckless speculation. So let us know what you guys think. Tweet at us. Hit us up in the YouTube comment section. What would you give up for rental Shohei Ohtani? Let us know. Whew. I need a cigarette after this episode of the podcast.